Joining us on the line now from the UK is Timothy Raine. He currently works as a support worker in a day centre that helps deaf-blind individuals. He's joining us on the book show to talk about his debut novel. It's called Winter's Leap. It's the story of a young man with mild cerebral palsy as he learns more about himself and society. Welcome to the book show, Timothy.
Thank you, Hannah. Well, thank you for having me on the book show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's great to have you with us. And what an interesting subject you've decided to tackle.
Well, yes, I guess there's not many books that deal with a young man with cerebral palsy, but because I've been a support worker dealing with deaf-blind individuals for 7.5 years now, there are people I work with on a regular basis with cerebral palsy, different conditions of cerebral palsy, so I thought it would be a suitable subject for my book.
Yeah, and for people who maybe don't understand exactly what cerebral palsy is, can you just explain it?
Yes, it's a congenital disease, which means it's from birth, and it can affect your muscular and your neuro pathways that affects your coordination of your body, and that can be very mild. It can be from somebody like Tommy in my book having just built-up shoes and leg supports, or it can be severe where the person's in a wheelchair and they can communicate, maybe with informal communication, but they have very little mobility in their limbs.
And I believe it's not curable, is it? It's just, it can be manageable in different levels.
Yes, well, it depends on the support that is given to the individual, and that depends on funding of local authorities.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you been working with people with cerebral palsy or deaf-blind people?
For 7.5 years now.
Gosh.
I've worked in residential initially, and then I worked in a day centre now, and I also worked in the community, going out to a young man's house and taking him out to give his parents respite during the day.
Wow, what a job. What's it like?
It's very interesting because from day to day you're never sure, really. It depends on the individual, how they're feeling, whether they've slept well, whether they've eaten well, depends on their mood, depends what they want to do. It's the same as any of us, really. We're not in a static mood or way of thinking, so it's very interesting because you get different stories every day with different individuals that I work with. It's very rewarding when you see people able to make progress and see people can enjoy themselves and not let any sort of disability get in their way, basically, through your support.
Can it be quite distressing sometimes?
Some people can find it distressing, but I personally believe that you should be professional. If you allow emotions to get in the way, you can't support the person properly anyway.
No.
And if they're deaf-blind, if they're relying on a sense of touch, and their other senses are sort of finely tuned, they can pick up on distress or stress or anger or whatever the support worker's feeling. So I try and be professional as possible, but I understand people are only human and it can be distressing sometimes.
Yeah. Wow, I think it's amazing what you do to be able to separate the two, you know, to go back to your own life and lead a sort of normal, happy life whilst you're going through things like that with other people. It must be hard for a lot of people to do that.
It is, but unfortunately, people with disabilities generally have shorter lives anyway because their bodies and minds haven't got the capacity like able-bodied people to fight off different infections or different diseases that we can get that we would find a lot easier to fight off and our bodies to fight off. So unfortunately, if you're in support work or care work for a number of years, you will generally come across cases where an individual will die, generally just through old age, but because their bodies just can't take it anymore, whatever they are suffering from, whether it's like pneumonia or infection or whatever.
Yeah.
If you look on the positive side, if you know they've had good support, you know that their families are fantastic generally. They are remarkable for the families of these people. You know that they've had the best support given to them by their family and by their support workers. So you can see that as a positive.
Yes, absolutely. So why did you decide to aim this book at children? It's kind of aimed at children aged 13 to 16, is that right?
Well, teenagers, yes, teenagers and adults. Well, I wanted them to understand that there are other people in this world that are less fortunate than them, and that can be in their own school, in their own community, and to try and generate empathy and compassion amongst that age group. Obviously, it's more difficult in adults because we're more set in our ways. And I also wanted to introduce, I don't think teenagers have full, or many adults either, a full sort of grasp of what violence can be and the consequences of violence. So I wanted to introduce a character that could be sympathetic to, if written sympathetically, and hopefully generate compassion and, like I said, empathy and adult themes to teenagers, because that's the age where you can help form opinions. I think by the time you get to adulthood, most of us, including myself, can be quite stuck in our opinions. I thought it was important to not only adults to read it, but to really target it at teenagers, because that's where opinions and ideas are formed and made.
Definitely. No, it's a great idea. And tell us about the character of Tommy then.
Tommy is a young man who's been in and out of foster care because obviously his family couldn't help him when he was younger and needed other people with resources, whether it's charity or local authority, to help him with his life. So he's been in and out of foster care. He's finally got his own accommodation, and due to the support he gets, he can have a reasonably independent life. Although he will have support, say, with cooking, going out to different places, but if he can follow a routine, he can be independent. Say, in the book, he can go out around London, do some window shopping, go to the pub, because that's a set route he's been on before and used many times before. And then it's the exploration of how unfortunate episode sort of generates the second part of the story, the second half of the story, and how we respond to Tommy's condition and what's gone before to generate the empathy that I ideally like from the readership.
And have you had any feedback so far?
Yes, I've had feedback. I've had it making some readers slightly tearful at the end, to some very constructive criticism from a librarian at a school, because I've been taking it around schools. I just started to take it around schools, and she just asked me why the violence in it is quite visceral. I wanted to make it visceral to have the impact, and I wanted it to demonstrate that it's not like a computer game, although I'm quite happy playing computer games. I've got a PlayStation myself. It's not like a computer game where you die and you get a new life and you just carry on and continue. Violence in real life can have devastating consequences for those involved, and for those, particularly when fatalities happen, it's those who are left behind to pick up the pieces who have the most difficult time, really.
Absolutely. And can I ask you about the title, the relevance of the title, Winter's Leap? Where does winter come into it?
Winter was the metaphor for the whole story, really, because it starts on the day that Tommy wakes up. It's a clear blue sky, and as the day progresses, the sky clouds over, becomes heavy with snow, and the second half of the first half of the story, the snow starts to fall. All that signifies the changes that are coming to Tommy. So by the end of the story, the snow has settled, it's deep snow, and everything's calmed down again with this resolution of the story. So it's really a metaphor for the turbulence that's happening in Tommy's life, and the turbulence is the catalyst for the change in Tommy's life. So it's a metaphor for the catalyst, really, the changes in Tommy's life and the disruption to his ordinary life that's resolved in a sad way by the end of the story.
And the book is all set in a day, is it?
It is all set in a day, more or less, yes.
And why did you choose to do that?
I thought it was the best way to demonstrate how people who are in supported living, it gives a window onto their routine. I wanted to explore that routine. I wanted to explore the character Tommy's routine to give the readership as good as understanding as possible.
Well, it's a great idea for a book. It really is. I applaud you for what you've taken on, Timothy.
Thank you very much.
If people want to get a copy of the book, it's called Winter's Leap, and it's available to buy on our website in the TRE bookshop section, and it's by Timothy Raine, who we've been chatting to today. Timothy, thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thanks very much for your time, and thanks very much for letting me be on TRE. Much appreciated.
TRE, the book programme.